that the WHO has designated July the 28th every year as the World Hepatitis Day. And this was based on the birthday of the man who discovered hepatitis B, so Bloomberg. So it's supposed to help to raise awareness in all the countries of the world about these dangerous but silent diseases. Again, I said hepatitis B and C are the most important because they are silent diseases. They are not visible. Like we have 4 diseases that have special days: malaria, tuberculosis, and HIV. But when one has any of these diseases, you tend to manifest some signs and symptoms. But in hepatitis B, by the time you manifest signs and symptoms, you are virtually, terminal. You are virtually going to die. So it's basically a silent disease.
So until it gets so late.
Yes, when the liver is irreversibly damaged, that's when you start manifesting signs and symptoms. So that's what makes it actually very important disease to know and to confront and to try and prevent as much as possible.
Okay. Now let's go back to, you said for hepatitis B, what are the main causes? You've talked about some things that could bring about this virus. Let's talk about the main causes for B, C, and perhaps hepatitis A too.
Okay, basically B and C are transmitted through blood and the body secretions. In Africa and Asia, hepatitis B is mainly transmitted in childhood. So it's a childhood infection. It could be during the passage of the child through the birth canal or during the intimate contact of the baby and mother during infancy. And also other known causes are blood transfusion, unsafe injections even in healthcare settings, transplantation of organs, So those are and then sexual contact, sexual intercourse, and
with an infected person.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what about hepatitis
C? Is actually quite similar, but B is actually more infectious. B is about 100 times more infectious than even HIV, and definitely about 10 to 50 times more infectious than C. But they share the same, So C is more transmitted through blood transfusion, unsafe injections, scarifications, circumcision, perforations, and all the other things, and less transmitted by sexual intercourse than B. But B can easily be transmitted, and it's important to know that B can survive on the surface.
Yeah, I was going to say that, I hear that if the virus stays, for instance, on the table,
it can
and
survive
you have
for 1
cut.
week. Can survive for at least a week. So it's a very...
I'm not sure HIV...
No, HIV doesn't survive minutes. But hepatitis B is quite a sturdy and very resistant virus. It can stay up to a week on its surface. So
and still be infectious.
Yes.
So why is it that not so much has been said about hepatitis? It looks like...
Because people die every day from hepatitis, but nobody attributes the deaths to hepatitis. In our environment, superstitious environment, people often attribute such sudden deaths to poisoning, spiritual attacks. Because somebody is healthy and within 3 months he suddenly dies, and it's believed that there must be some diabolical forces that must have been responsible. Somebody who hasn't presented any symptoms suddenly starts having swelling of the legs, swelling of the abdomen, yellowness of the eyes, and within 3 months he or she is dead. So most people don't attribute this. Most people don't go to hospital because there's the false belief that most yellowness of the eyes, as jaundice, is better treated with herbal medicines, which may even aggravate the situation. So they don't even get to see the doctor. Sometimes somebody may develop sudden pain in the abdomen, which may mean that a liver cancer has ruptured and is bleeding into the abdomen distends, and the person dies within a few days, and nobody is often attributed to poisoning. So that's why not much is said about it. It doesn't present as a long illness where the person is ill, loses weight over a long period like in HIV, or has very high fever as in malaria, is coughing out blood as in tuberculosis, which could last about a year or two before the person passes on. It's so rapid It's usually silent. People are normally healthy looking, and suddenly they are ill and it becomes terminal. Most times they don't even have the opportunity to get to the hospital before they die. They could die overnight if they rupture a nodule on the liver from cancer of the liver. And most times autopsies are generally not done here. So nobody actually relates these deaths to hepatitis at all.
Okay, and looking at this, how much of you've said that sometimes when this happens, people don't even, attribute it to hepatitis. Do we have any statistics as to the burden in our environment?
It will surprise you to know that about 70 to 80% of us have been infected with hepatitis B before the age of 5. So it means that about 100 to 120 million Nigerians are actually infected. Luckily, the immunity is able to get rid of the virus in the majority of people, so that you have only about 20 million people who are currently infected. So when you see somebody who is infected and people look at him as if, oh, probably he's sexually promiscuous or he does intravenous drugs like they do abroad, I think people should be aware of the fact that most of us who are pointing a finger actually have been infected already. We are just lucky that our immunity has done the job, or like we've come out of clearing the virus.
So for those who come down with it, what is it that, played out?
Yeah, the mechanism is not, usually if you acquire the infection in childhood when the immunity is immature, which is the situation in Africa and Asia, the tendency is that the thing will tend to stay longer in the body because immunity is unable to fight it. So as the children grow up towards adolescence, then they start clearing the virus and so on. But in some people, because the virus is a very cunning virus, it has so many ways of evading the immune system. So that's why it tends to persist. It doesn't mean that the person has any peculiar thing. It's just that if your immunity is unable to sort out all the false signals being sent out by the virus, you're likely not to be able to clear it. You may just accept it as being part of you, and then it just stays in the body.
What's the incubation period?
For hepatitis B, it's about 6 weeks to 6 months. And for hep C, it's about 1 to 3 months. So it's a bit shorter with C. But hep B is the more common virus, especially in our environment. It's quite common.
Okay, now let's talk about the need for screening, because all of this, since you say by the time someone starts presenting with some of the symptoms, then it's gone so far. Let's talk about screening. What's the process like?
Okay, before I talk about screening, it's important to indicate why screening is important. Because you screen for diseases where you know that there's an effective treatment, and then treatment for hepatitis B is very effective and can actually keep the person alive to live his or her normal lifespan. So it's important that one detects those that are infected so that they don't die preventable deaths, since the treatment is very effective. If the treatment were not effective, we may say that there's no need to screen. But we have here treatment that over the years has become very effective, so we need to screen. Unfortunately, we don't have a national screening program. So that's the problem. But the WHO, through this World Hepatitis Day resolution, has said that government should make screening, prevention, screening, diagnosis and treatment available. At least also make people aware of this disease. So we are waiting on government to take up this challenge, which they have actually signed up to.
Okay, so while we wait for government to take up the challenge, what can I do as a person?
Every Nigerian should know his or her status about hepatitis. At least at any age, every person should know whether he is hepatitis B or C positive. But hepatitis C tends to be a slower virus. It tends to take a longer time before it gets to the end. If you screen too early for C, you may not be able to do much. But everybody at least should know his or her status about B. Your children, everybody in your family should know whether he is B positive or negative. For C, I will suggest that maybe from the age of 40, when we start this annual adults medical examination for preventable causes of disease in middle age, then everybody should know his status for C as well.